Hey there darlings, welcome back to Roots and Refuge Farm, where today we are establishing our new berry area of the garden. Y'all have no idea how excited I am for this new perennial space in the garden where we are going to be getting all these berries established. So when we first moved to our new farm, which has been 4 years ago this summer, I knew very high on the priority list that I wanted to get some fruit established. Early on in growing for me, that was a very daunting thing, and I was thinking very annually. Like when I first started gardening, it was like, gosh, fruit trees take so long to get established. Berries take so long to really produce. And so I didn't plant them for some years. And when I finally did plant them and spent the first real year of waiting for them to really start producing a lot, as soon as they started producing a lot, I thought, why didn't I do this sooner? So when we moved to this farm 4 years ago this summer, fruit was high on the priority list. Got through our first fall and winter, and the following spring we planted our orchard up in the front. So those trees are now, they've been in the ground for 3 years. Last summer I got a bushel of peaches off of one of them, and this year they are loaded down with fruit. I have a few different trees that look like they're going to give us a pretty good harvest now, this third year in. And I love that. I want more fruit trees, and this year I am taking that appreciation of perennial grown fruit to a new level and giving this really big section in the garden belt to this. We planted berry bushes down kind of at the end of the garden belt. I have a very established blackberry hedge down there that's from thornless blackberries. That's going to stay there. A lot of the plants in the ground though, I decided I want to move them up, include them kind of in the irrigation system that we're building, and be able to incorporate them more in the overall design of my garden. But as the blueberries have been coming on this year, as the blackberries are ripening, as I have harvested my first few handfuls of the most delicious raspberries I've ever eaten, my appreciation for berries has been very high. The whole idea of this space, we're gonna have a chicken coop right here, and then this will all be fenced in as part of the whole garden belt. We designed these beds. They're 2 foot wide and 12 foot long, and you'll see the irrigation posts popping up in them because they're going to be irrigated. But my hope here was to plant berries together. So down here I've got the blueberries all in the same bed. So blueberries have different pH needs than other berries, and since we are just surrounded by pine agroforestry here, my hope was to be able to gather up pine needles and mulch these. They really like pine as mulch. But I'm also planning on relocating some of my raspberries, the blueberries I have elsewhere. As I said, I'm going to leave my established thornless blackberry hedge down in the other area, but we also just planted these 2 rows of thornless blackberries to have even more of those. And I'm just envisioning all of these beds full of perennial bushes that are going to provide for us for years to come, in a fence, protected from the deer, able to have their individually needs met in these different beds. And guys, this is going to produce so much food with relatively very little work. Fruit is one of the biggest ways to save money by growing your own food, because berries are really expensive. I mean, especially if you're going to buy organic ones, which is how I'm going to grow these. And they're also relatively very simple to preserve. So by growing, multiple blueberry rows, by growing these thornless blackberries, I'm gonna get gallons of fruit. We're gonna eat that fresh, which is huge. You got kids, they want to snack on something. Being able to have fresh fruit and being able to tell them, have as much as you want, is awesome. But they're very easy to freeze, obviously, to make jams. I freeze dry them. And then all through the season, I'm cooking cobblers and buckles and baking them into breads and muffins. Let's peep down here. No, I came out here to get some footage in the orchard, and I just realized that there's some ripe fruit on the mulberry tree. This is the first year for this to really produce, and it's got a lot on it. I would like to thank the sponsor of this video, and if you have been here for a while, you've never heard me say that. I really don't do sponsored content much at all. However, whenever Stark Bros reached out to us and asked if we would be interested in a sponsorship, I thought, you know what? I've been planting your stuff for 8 years and talking about it. I might as well go officially on the record here. So we met the folks from Stark Bros at a conference in, I think it was 2018. But when I met them, I was like, hey, these are the people that I have ordered stuff from in the past. And got to chat with them, actually learned a lot of the history of the company. They're actually America's oldest continually operating nursery with over 200 years of experience, which I thought that was really neat whenever I learned that. The reason why I really like Stark Bros is I've always had a really good experience that everything I get from them is healthy and grows well. The other thing is their website is like super interactive, and when I first moved from Arkansas to South Carolina, very similar growing conditions but a little bit different in a completely different area, and I was able to go on and put my region in, and they automatically generate for you in your search what is going to do well in your area. I was able to read a lot of reviews about different varieties and things and see what other people were experiencing, and I really appreciate reading reviews whenever I'm going to purchase things, especially things that I don't know a whole lot about. When we first got it started, as I mentioned, I was super overwhelmed by planting fruit. And since I have been able to experience their really great customer service. Now, I've also known to pick up a plant on a roadside stand, so I can't say that absolutely all of the fruit plants on my farm came from Stark Bros because, you know, I've got some hodgepodge of things that I've picked up at other places, but I can tell you that the majority of what is growing here on our farm came from Stark Bros. And they also have options, which I think is really cool for my viewers, because I know that not everybody's growing in a situation like this. You can go on and search like container varieties, things that do well in smaller spaces. They do a lot of like dwarf varieties. So the two pear trees that are right behind my greenhouse are dwarf pear trees from Stark Bros, and I specifically put them there on the north side of the greenhouse because they are going to get, you know, somewhat full, and I knew they were going to block a little bit of the light, which is fine on the north side, but they're not going to get huge, and I thought it would just be really cool to have pear trees growing in the garden. And another thing that they offer that I really appreciate is like a 1-year survival guarantee. Now, ideally, we would have planted this space a month ago. When we ordered all of these berries, they shipped to be planted a month ago. That was kind of the ideal window. Now, I ordered multiple of these, let's see, what are they called? Blue crop blueberries. With blueberries, you want to make sure that you have more than one type of blueberry. So you need multiple varieties in the same growing space. They don't have to be like side by side, but I already had multiple varieties. I have like 3 or 4 different varieties of blueberries in my garden. All are ones that are recommended for my area by Stark Bros. Maya's actually moving some of them over right now, and my plan is to have these 2 beds completely full. We may have enough plants to do 1 more bed. I'm considering doing more of the thornless blackberries on this side. That's a lot of blackberries. I gotta say, I really dig you gardening.
Well, that's crazy because you dig me anyway. You just really dig me now.
So with these berries that we're moving, this is also not the ideal time to move these, but I want to put trees in over where these were. And sadly, I'm going to pull all this immature fruit off, which means I'm foregoing this handful of fruit this year. But I want these plants to establish their roots before they worry about ripening this fruit. Thinking long term here. We planted these in the ground last year. Honestly, I should have dug the grass back more and tried to put some sort of weed barrier in and mulched it a little bit better, because these have just been so choked out by the crabgrass and by Bermuda grass that they really have struggled, and so that's part. These plants will be so much bigger next year, and I'm putting them about 3 feet apart. These are 12-foot beds, and I'm putting 4 berry bushes per bed because they'll get really big. You can plant them as close as 2 feet apart and you'll have kind of a hedge, but if you give them more space, they're just going to fill out more. So once you get over the fear of the long-term thinking of growing perennial stuff in your garden, thinking that way can really help you as far as getting the stuff to grow. So Mai's actually going and getting the hose, and we're about to water these in really deeply. When you are getting berry plants established, or trees, or anything that is a perennial thing, we're really focusing even this first whole year in supporting it for long-term growth, and very deep watering infrequently, meaning I don't want to water it shallow every single day. I want to go really, really deep every couple days. And I'm going to watch it here this first week, especially since some of these we transplanted, and they may need a little more water right at the beginning for the sake of supporting them. But throughout this season, I want very deep watering every few days to encourage these plants to push deep roots. We want a really good root system. I also want to mulch a lot. So that was the mistake we made with some of these. I don't know what you were doing. What? Nothing. I thought you were about to spray me. I didn't realize that. I thought you had it kinked the way you were holding it.
Does that sound like my character? But I never spray you with water. Why are you making that sus face?
Like you haven't sprayed me with those before.
You're saying it's an option.
Another thing is to pull off those early blooms and fruits. You don't have to necessarily do this the entire first season, but let's say your pots have a little small plant in it and it puts on a few flowers, and it is very exciting to be like, oh wow, I'm actually going to get a few berries. And it probably won't hurt anything to let a little baby plant ripen a few berries, but as a best practice, I like to go ahead and pull those off so that my plant can get very established for longevity. Since we are planting these things with long-term goals in mind, you really need to think about long-term permanence of them. You need to consider how you are going to maintain the area around your berry plants or your trees. Grass grows ferociously here where I am. You know, we established our garden here in what used to be a cattle pasture planted in Bermuda grass. So we have just the zombiest of zombie grasses here, meaning that you think you killed it, but it will be coming back. That is why we actually opted to do these really short little raised beds. This is just one board high, put together very simply. We used just a thick painter's paper as sort of a weed suppressant underneath this, and then filled it with what is essentially about 8 inches of good compost-rich soil on top. Now, the purpose for this is, one, I wanted to give these plants just a little bit of a head start in getting established before inevitably the grass will begin growing up into these beds. It is just an inevitable thing, especially with them being so shallow. But with the barrier of the raised beds, we can easily mow and weed eat around this without having to worry about accidentally hitting our berry bushes. And we can mulch super heavily inside these beds to repress the weeds directly around the bushes. Now eventually these things are going to get really, really big. They're going to block out the sun. That's going to deter the weed growth underneath. But the whole purpose of us building this space so neat and tidy like this is that I am hoping to make it a little more manageable on us to keep it under wraps, because we are going to pick these berries every day. I want to safely send my children out to pick the berries. Being in the South and having to consider snakes and things like that, I wanted to create like a tidy space that we could keep as managed as possible. And back here behind the greenhouse, see my dwarf pear trees. I just got a couple semi-dwarf peach trees from them that I'm going to replace the places in the ground where I had my berries. So one of the biggest things as far as maintaining perennial fruit plants, either berry bushes or even fruit trees in an orchard, year to year, is pruning. There's a lot of information on the Start Grows website about that, and I know that things like that can seem intimidating to a new grower, but it's really not hard. And I'm here to tell you, as someone who was so hugely intimidated, I don't know why I was so intimidated by growing fruit, because it took more than one season to get it really established. In my mind, it just seemed like such an advanced thing to do. But even when you consider pruning, you're talking about, you know, an hour's worth of work maybe that you're gonna have in order to have a plant that is going to produce food for you literally year after year. A little bit of feeding, a little bit of mulching, watering them until they get really established, and then a lot of times you don't have to do a whole lot of watering, especially if you live in a place where it rains regularly. I mean, seriously, berry bushes and fruit trees are kind of a very, very easy way to grow a lot of food. You just have to have some long-term thinking. I was actually just walking around here thinking, what all have I got from Stark Brothers? I know I've ordered a lot over the years. My horseradish that I have referenced to you guys multiple times back here, which is perennial and rather aggressively growing. I wouldn't suggest putting it in a bed that you're trying to plant a lot of other things, but it also works. You're just gonna have to harvest a lot to keep it contained. But I originally got a little bag with a handful of roots from Stark Bros, and it is obviously served me well. I've harvested this out probably 5 or 6 times since we first put it in here, and I harvest it very regularly so it doesn't spread too much. And I will pull what I think is all of it out. It always comes back because little bits of roots stay in the ground. Of course, horseradish is great for, I mean, making great dip for prime rib, but more commonly I'm using it in things like making fire cider and for medicinal purposes. So this is the part that I said that we're leaving because of how established it is. But we've decided when it dies back this year, we're actually going to cut it back a whole lot and put like a cattle panel fence essentially all the way down this mound to support these plants and hold them up, which will make it easier to get up, around, and underneath. Oh look, we're almost there. It's not quite fully black yet. Oh, this one is. Look. You know, back whenever I was like dreaming of having a homestead and I lived in town and I didn't even have permission to have a garden in my rent house. I used to go forage for wild blackberries. Now, growing the thornless ones feels a little like cheating to me because I used to get just completely shredded by those wild blackberries. It was too hot to wear anything but shorts and a tank top, but I would end up absolutely just like completely cut up because wild blackberry brambles are intensely thorny. Picking the berries is one of the jobs that I give to my boys, and everybody enjoys it a heck of a lot more with the thornless blackberry bushes. Thanks for helping me plant, sweet Maya.
I'm glad that you're digging me when I'm digging.
Well, I hope this encourages you guys, and if you are somewhere in the midst of analysis paralysis when it comes to planting fruit, just do it. Tomorrow you will thank you. It is totally worth it whenever you are coming out, when you consider that a package of organic berries at the store for like a little package is now like at least $6.
And that's just one snack.
I know. I come out here and I grab, and I'll think all the time, I'm like, that's like $6 worth of berries I just found in the yard. All right, well, thank you guys. The link to Stark Bros is in the description below, and it is not too late to get them in the ground. If I'm doing it this late in zone 8 in South Carolina, though it may not be fully ideal, I'm sure they're gonna be completely fine. It's definitely not too late for you guys. Thank you for hanging out with us today. God bless you. Until next time.